Although it's not always admitted, an engineer's work on the battlefield, well, it's just about honest as work can be. You build a teleporter so your heavy's knees don't buckle by the time they reach the front line. You build a dispenser, because let's be honest, no one on your team is going to be playing medic. And as for the sentry, you can never go wrong with it. I'd probably go as far to say it's one of the greatest things this class even owns.
My sentry. I'm gonna lay you out.
Yeah, scratch that, shotguns are the greatest thing Engineer owns. In a shooter game where American patriots barreling towards you and over-the-top finger gun duels are a very common sight, it's nice to appreciate the much more simpler concepts of the game, like shotguns. A weapon type that can be equipped by half of the 9 classes and is basically one of the founding cornerstones to TF2's traditional gameplay. The Engineer, however, is the only class using the shotgun as a primary weapon, while the other shotgun users only have access to stock or side grades such as the Reserve Shooter and Family Business, providing small stat changes like a faster firing rate or an unnecessarily angry letter to soldier players that know how to rocket jump. The Engineer innovates on this basic formula, with each of his unique primaries having their own important purposes and massively changing how an Engineer will present themselves, making what I think is a perfectly balanced weapon slot and a perfectly balanced weapon trifecta. So without further ado, let's take a look at the first part of this weapon slot, the Rescue Ranger. Now, the Rescue Ranger is a weapon that innovates as a shotgun by not really being a shotgun much at all. Your clip holds less ammo, your pockets hold less ammo, and you shoot projectile bolts instead of actual bullets. But this is mainly because the weapon heavily focuses on giving new attributes to support your buildings, in exchange of trading the crispness from a normal shotgun for relatively pitiful close-range damage output. But hey, at least you could use it to make some wonderful fine art pieces. Alright, no, you're done. These slow-moving projectiles are actually very useful though, sort of acting like a wireless wrench swing, repairing you and your team's buildings for a moderate amount of health. This makes building management a whole lot easier, since you don't have to be glued next to any of your stuff in case they get damaged, and instead you could spam heal them from a much safer position. Putting that distance from something like your sentry also makes it much more difficult for enemies to shut down both of you at the same time. Maybe not that much distance, because the Rescue Ranger doesn't remove sappers since, you know, they have to give spies something. Or so you thought, because why would we give spies something? For 100 metal and needing a building to be in your sight line, you could teleport them right into your hand and bring them straight to safety whenever you see fit. And being able to do this also promotes what we like to call the funny sentry. Pairing the teleport ability with the Wrangler's sentry jumping, or just placing your sentry in a pretty precarious spot, is something you could do with the Rescue Ranger with very little consequence. Because if things become dangerous even in the slightest, you could just pick it back up. And all of this is why I think the Rescue Ranger fits into the Engineer weapon trifecta by being his defensive weapon of choice. It's the best shotgun for when you're preparing your buildings at the start of a round, or if you need more support during a round to maintain their uptime better. And having this defensive prowess is always nice, especially for a class listed in the defense role. But what if the situation called for something a little more like a shotgun? Which is when we take a look at the other side of the trifecta. The Widowmaker is TF2's unstoppable, seemingly infinite force that will never let go of that W key. It's a weapon that fires through your metal count rather than regular ammo, but will in turn replenish your metal count depending on how much damage you do. So as long as you hit your shots... Hold on, aim your gun, come on, hold on a second. As long as you hit your shots, you will never have to stop shooting. This makes Engineer an offense-driven menace for the moments when you need to be more than just backline support. With the Widowmaker, you're able to take space aggressively, and be ready for any oncoming engagement like enemies trying to contest your buildings, which to me looks like an automatic refund for the sentry I just built. And might I also add how crazy the Widowmaker is when paired with team support or an Uber. I mean, the amount of sheer damage you can do from the simplest change of not having to reload allows you to win out in fights far beyond what most people picture Engineers capable of. Wow, does this clip ever end? Oh, okay, never mind, that was everything. I mean, do you hear how this thing sounds? It even sounds like the kind of gun that'll do some damage. Just be wary though that, like most shotguns, the Widowmaker is only really meant to be a source of close quarters damage, and that getting into an encounter outside of that effective range makes you much more prone to actually using more metal because damage fall off. It exists. Now with weapons like the Rescue Ranger and the Widowmaker, it may at times seem like you and your buildings are unstoppable, but even with all their potential, no matter what, the buildings you work so hard to keep up and the kill streak that you had to press a total of 2 buttons to achieve are eventually going to be destroyed. And when that happens, there will be another shotgun waiting to strike. Now we move on to probably one of my favorite unlocks in the entirety of the game, the Frontier Justice. The idea of this weapon is very simple. You build a sentry and once it's inevitably destroyed, will convert any kills and assists it earned into guaranteed crit shots for your shotgun. And then use said crits to just delete enemies before they can even react in time. Like in this clip where I wasn't able to save my sentry from this heavy medic combo, which it's a real shame. But oh hey, look at that. I don't think the heavy understands how much danger he just put the rest of his team in. Now while this all seems pretty strong on paper, which it definitely can be, it's important to note the Frontier Justice is still a side grade. And this really plays in whenever you don't have any crits available, as the smaller clip size makes it automatically weaker than the stock shotgun. But there are a few points you can utilize to maximize how often you'll have crits. One point that usually isn't mentioned is that sentries don't count kills based on how much damage they do to an enemy, but only if they were the last thing to damage that enemy, so it gives them credit for the kill. Hold on, did you see that ammo box? Look at that perfect trajectory. That thing came at me like it was a hole-in-one. So because of this, many engineers will often pair this weapon with mini sentries for how easily disposable they are, and also because them constantly being up makes finishing off yours and other teammates' targets for free crits later on a much more common thing. So thank you to all of my teammates who did 295 damage to that heavy. My sentry will take it from here. Your sentry also doesn't have to be earning these kills while you have the weapon equipped either. So you could be using one of his other primary weapons first, then once you notice your sentry's racked up a whole bunch of kills, simply switch to the Frontier Justice before it's destroyed, and right then and there, you just took full advantage of the Engineer's shotgun trifecta. This is the final piece of a perfect weapon slot. A weapon that lets you freely dip between the extremes of offensive and defensive gameplay. Something that stands as the balance and takes advantage of moments where the other weapons in the trifecta would fall short. I mean, it's crazy that Engineer only owns 3 unique primary weapons, and they're all so good and so perfectly connected to each other. We aren't talking about the Pomson, right? It's not even a shotgun. Why would we... Alright, so the Pomson. I didn't want to list this thing whatsoever within the trifecta, because frankly in its current state, I wouldn't touch this weapon with a telephone pole. But it is listed as a unique Engineer primary, so here we are. If I was going to put the Pomson anywhere, it'd probably be all the way over here. Because when you have a gun that shoots extremely slow projectiles, has damage output that makes running at people with your wrench look good, and is thousands of times less reliable like this weapon is, the only thing this weapon could serve Engineer as is being a meme weapon. When you're playing TF2, notable for being a pretty funny game, sometimes you want to get into doing some funny things. And I suppose that the Pomson and its notoriety in a horrific way could do that for you. This isn't something like the Holiday Punch though that can actually at times spread some cheer. The Pomson is fuel for reactions you might see when enemies find out they were just defeated by the worst item in the entire game. But otherwise, do us all a favor and put a real shotgun back in those hands of yours. With all of this said, this right here is the Engineer primary weapon trifecta. A balanced weapon slot that was so well designed, each of the weapons part of it basically play off each other. You use the Rescue Ranger when you need better defense or building support, the Widowmaker for better offense and close range personal strength, and the Frontier Justice for flexibility and when you need to dip between the two extremes of Engineer's gameplay, or just when you happen to rack up a lot of kills in your sentry. Now there is also of course the stock shotgun and the spicier version of it that hadn't been mentioned mainly because they aren't unlocks unique to Engineer, but I suppose for the stock lovers out there who prefer a more consistent weapon or just really like to put really cool skins on everything, I would place them right in the middle as an option that's there and you can always fall to if you so choose. And that covers everything. There are very few weapon slots both in and outside of TF2 that I've found such a liking to compared to Engineer's shotguns, and is one of the many ways on how the game had provided and innovated so much to its genre, and why Engineer is one of my personal favorite classes to play. I am actually quite curious myself though which of Engineer's shotguns are your favorite, so feel free to let me know what yours is in the comments below. Once again, mine is the Frontier Justice, but other than that, thank you very much for all of the recent support in my TF2 related content. There's a bunch of bigger videos coming up soon, so that said, I will see you all in the next silly little video I make. Bye bye.